Okay, welcome back, my AP Art students. Today we're going to start your synthesis project. And if you guys remember, we talked a little bit about synthesis when we reviewed your AP portfolio and rubric at the very beginning of the year. And what this is, or what the screen is showing you, is when the rubric pretty much mentions synthesis. And I'll go over what synthesis means in just a second. But today, again, we're going to start the synthesis project. Now, what does synthesis mean? Synthesizing materials means making intentional media decisions directly related to the artwork's meaning. So, in the rubric, it mentions synthesizing your materials and processes. Now, in your portfolio, it does not mean to take it as extreme as we're about to take it with this project, because I want you guys to synthesize your material or the materials you're using and really make it conceptualize what you are trying to convey, or what meaning you are trying to convey within your art piece. So just know it doesn't have to be extreme like this in your portfolio. But an example of this, so for example, let's say a student conceptualizes an artwork on how pollution has impacted the earth. They want to make an acrylic landscape depicting floating garbage and a sea turtle caught in plastic pop rings. Now, instead of jumping right into working, the student would reflect on the following questions first. Why choose acrylic paint on canvas? How does acrylic on canvas enhance or detract from the message of the artwork? Why depict a sea turtle and a garbage floating in the ocean? What materials can be incorporated that relate to pollution? And how can these materials be used in new ways? And then it says these materials, or these questions, might lead the student into a series of landscapes collage with garbage. The student could visit various sites, document the locations, collect trash from those sites, and use the trash to create the artwork. They would paint the landscape with liquids that are often carelessly tossed down the drain. So this is giving you a good example as to how you can implement the meaning of your artwork in with your materials instead of just jumping in with a regular old acrylic painting, which acrylic would convey meaning anyway because acrylic is plastic. However, this takes it even a step further. So again, the goal is for the materials chosen to demonstrate the idea and contribute to the artwork's meaning. So you guys are going to do this, and you're going to do this with a self-portrait, and don't be like, oh my gosh, another self-portrait. I know you're thinking it, but just so you know, your self-portrait does not have to depict your face. If you feel like a broken vessel, you could create a broken vessel, meaning like a broken pot or teacup or ceramic piece, whatever. Something that symbolizes you. If you do not want to do faces, or your face in particular, you do not have to. The first example I show you has like some facial features, but it's not really depicting a completed portrait. So don't think you have to go that route. Now, I'm going to be honest, the examples that I show you are all like finished portraits, but just know you do not have to do like a portrait of you if you do not want to. As long as you're able to explain why this is a portrait of you, that's perfectly fine. So this project overview are pretty much the goals that I want to have for you, and are students create a fully resolved artwork using non-traditional materials or tools. So I really want you guys to think about like who you are, what you are, and how you are. So if you feel a certain way, think about the materials or tools to help convey you. Students need to consider how media and tools relate to their meaning of the subject matter and artwork as a whole. And then students document the process from brainstorming to refinement. Now, documentation is really important. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Just because this is something that you can include into your portfolio. You guys have been doing documentation with all your projects, so this is no different. However, I am being a little bit more particular on what you document in this project. So, an example or some examples here. Let's say you feel that you are tough on the outside and soft on the inside. You may consider sewing a soft sculpture and attaching bottle caps as armor. Or maybe you're someone who loves to make food. What would happen if you mixed spices into your paint or used handwritten recipes and food packaging as collage material? And then here are the examples that I have. And then this is the one that I was talking about. Has facial features, but again, is not a finished portrait. However, it's beautiful and it's really conveying a self-portrait here. They're using Band-Aids. It looks like tape. And it looks like a collage of fabric. And I say fabric just because it looks like it's frayed on the edges. Which I would have loved to read like why they chose these materials. Then we have a portrait made out of salt. This is a portrait made out of beads, and if you can tell, this is wire or string strung up vertically, and you can see the beads are like meticulously placed to create this portrait. This is incredible. I wish I could see this in person. This is a portrait made out of ceramics, so like broken plates and cups, and they've painted over them. This is a portrait made out of glass, and then flowers, and this is more of a silhouette, which works too. Now, you guys remember that in the rubric, it's really looking for practice, experimentation, and revision. So I just took this a little step further and gave you some examples. So for practice, this can include sketching repeatedly to improve drawing skills, experimenting with different brushstrokes and painting, or trying out various folds and pleats in fabric or sculpture. This isn't an example particular to this project, but just example in general. But in this project, you could practice honestly different sketches and show you practicing with the material that you've chosen. Now, experimentation kind of goes hand in hand with practice, I think, and that is you experimenting or experiment with combining different mediums with like collage and paint, or explore unconventional materials like found objects. They might also try out different lighting conditions or compositional arrangements. So I really want you guys to experiment with more than one medium, and I'll show that in the next slide. But really try different things. Don't just come up with one idea and run with it. I want you to explore other avenues. And then lastly is revision. I want you guys to think about how you can improve your artwork, and this can be after your mid-project peer review. But that is to revise their composition based on feedback, adjust the color palette to better convey a specific mood, or refine their technique based on experimentation. So I want you guys to try to document these three things. So document, document, document. For practice, I want you to create multiple sketches. The minimum is 3. I want you guys to have written notes. So write your thoughts and plans. And then I want you to try the media that you've chosen. So I want you to document your practice. For experimentation, I want you to experiment with at least 2 different mediums. And I want you to take a picture of this as well. And then lastly, for your revision, you can take away something during your peer review and apply it to your project or show how your plan changed over time. So it could be as simple something as simple as changing your color scheme or your composition. It doesn't have to be like a whole complete change in your project. So as far as grading goes, I'm looking for 3 sketches with written notes. That is due on the 10th. Then I'm looking for documentation of your practice, experimentation, and revision. Minimum of 3 pictures. Don't forget this will need to be due or turned into Google Classroom. And your documentation is always due on your due date. So you have plenty of time to get those pictures in. You guys are graded on your mid-project peer review, and then of course the final project, which is due on the 22nd. These are all separate grades, as you guys might know, or if you don't, just know that they are all separate grades. Of course, your project is weighted as 80% of your grade, so make sure you spend a good time on that. Let me go back here. Just to reiterate, I want a picture of you practicing. So practicing your sketches, notes, and your media. I want to see a picture of you experimenting with at least 2 different mediums. And then I want to see a picture of you revising your project in some way. So again, a minimum of 3 pictures. You're most likely going to take more, but that's just the minimum. And that is it. So you guys are to synthesize your materials, creating a self-portrait. Again, your self-portrait does not have to be an actual portrait. If you want to create something that symbolizes you, go for it. And that is it. That is the synthesis project. I am so excited to come back from fall break and see what you guys create. And email me if you guys have any questions. All right, have fun creating. Bye, guys.